Welcome back in. Today we're going to be discussing 6 players that I am higher on the Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings. Let's get into it. First things first, let's start at the quarterback position. We're going to start with Trevor Lawrence, QB 17, my QB 12. I get it. Last year he wasn't very good. A lot of people that drafted him inside the top 12 last year came away pretty disappointed. But I think where he's being going now at 113th overall, I think is a great value and a great buying opportunity for somebody if you want to wait on quarterback because despite the fact that he threw for 4,000 yards with only 21 touchdowns last year, he still had the ninth most rushing yards among quarterbacks and seventh in rushing touchdowns. He was also 11th in accuracy rating and 16th in red zone completion percentage. But I really like the additions that they brought in this offseason. Drafting Brian Thomas in the first round, I think, goes a long way. He posted a 17.3 yards per reception and amassed 17 touchdowns last year at LSU. But really, the thing that stands out is his 4.33 speed, especially at 6'3", 210 pounds. Is very impressive and really should open things up for Trevor Lawrence, who was 12th in deep ball completion percentage last year, which was kind of a factor they were missing. Christian Kirk got hurt early. Calvin Ridley, it's at 30 years old. I mean, isn't somebody that the teams are necessarily worried about taking the top off of defense, but adding somebody in with this kind of speed at 4.33, I definitely think is going to help Trevor Lawrence. They also brought in Gabe Davis, who also is very good at the deep ball as well. So really, they're kind of shifting what they did last year, bringing in a lot more talent with Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones being gone from this offense. So I think Trevor Lawrence can bounce back in a big way this year. And especially for people that are waiting on quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, I definitely think is that guy. We kind of forget too, he's only 24 years old. He's actually 3 years younger than Joe Burrow. And he's actually almost about the same age as Jaden Daniels, who is coming into the league as a rookie. So Trevor Lawrence, and we also forget in 2022, he was the QB7. So I think he can get a pretty big bounce back here for Trevor Lawrence. And also one last feather in his cap is the Jaguars have the easiest strength of schedule this year for quarterbacks. So Trevor Lawrence, I think, is a pretty good buy, pretty much bounce back candidate. Let's move over to the running backs. Isaiah Pacheco is my guy this year. I am planting a flag for Isaiah Pacheco. He is my RB6, while his ECR is RB11, and his ADP right now is RB13 or 40th overall. In only 14 games last year, he posted a 72% opportunity share with a 10% target share last year, 935 rushing yards, 245 receiving yards, and 9 touchdowns. Now, he was obviously very explosive, 11th in breakaway run rate. He was also efficient with 18th in yards created per touch and 20th in yards per route run. So he's a very good pass catcher as well. So there's a lot to like with Isaiah Pacheco's profile. But one thing that really stands out is his opportunity share. There aren't many running backs that post for a 70% opportunity share last year. I think Isaiah Pacheco is being a little bit undervalued in one of the league's best offenses. And not to mention that Jerick McKinnon is now gone, who had a 7.3% target share, 35% route participation. He also had almost 200 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. So I think a lot of that's going to go to Isaiah Pacheco. CEH was re-signed, but there's really nobody else really to worry about here. So as long as Isaiah Pacheco can stay healthy, I really think he has top 5 upside this year and one of the league's best offenses. I don't know why he is being valued at an RB2 right now in ADP. I think he should be going much higher. I will take the discount. Let's move over to my other guy who I definitely don't have any problem with taking as an RB1 either, and that's James Cook. Despite his ECR being RB14, he is my RB9. 62% opportunity share last year for him. And he also had the 4th most rushing yards among all running backs and the 8th most receiving yards. Something we're always looking for running backs is the ability to catch passes. And he definitely demonstrated that last year with a 10% target share. He was also 6th in yards per route run and 2nd in yards per reception. He was also efficient on the ground, 12th with 2 yards per carry, 27th in explosive run rate, and 32nd missed tackles forced per attempt. So I know the one knock against James Cook this year is going to be that everybody's going to bring up is the goal line carries. He only saw 4 of them last year compared to 11 for Latavius Murray. While I don't know how much that changes, but it's not something I'm going to sit here and heavily discount him for. And also one other thing, I'm not worried about Ray Davis. I think Ray Davis is just a guy, very much like Tank Bigsby was last year for Travis Etienne when everybody tried to make him a thing. This is a very bad running back class. This year, there's really like 3 or 4 guys that really you should be really excited about. At least they were drafted earlier. There's some late round guys, but for the most part, Ray Davis was most people's RB8, RB9 in a really bad running back class. So I'm not all that concerned with him. I think James Cook is in a great spot this year. I think he sees even more opportunity. I think he's going to be more involved in the passing game, especially with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, which is 41% of the total team targets out the door this year. James Cook is in a really good spot, taking him all day. I don't care about Ray Davis, and you shouldn't either. So let's move over to the wide receivers. Let's talk about Jaylen Waddle. Wide receiver 19 in ECR, wide receiver 13 for me. I don't understand that either. He had a 24% target share last year, 72 catches, 1,000 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. And he averaged 14.2 fantasy points per game. And the dude was just a baller. Eighth in yards per route run, 15th in yards per team pass attempt, sixth in first down per route run rate. He was also fourth in target per route run rate. Now, he dealt with some injuries last year. He suffered a concussion in week 2. He also had a high ankle sprain in week 16. But this is still a very consolidated target share, despite the fact they brought in Odell Beckham, who is 37 years old. I'm not really worried about Odell Beckham. He'll play a part-time role in this offense. And then Jonnu Smith, but they've never really showed much of a willingness to really get their tight end involved. So this is still going to be a very consolidated offense between Jaylen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. I think Jaylen Waddle could bounce back a little bit this year and get back to being more of a high-end wide receiver too. Love Jaylen Waddle. If I can get him, where he's going, no problem with that either. Really like Jaylen Waddle, especially compared to some of the wide receivers that are going around him. And I think he bounces back, in terms of the overall scoring department this year. And I have no problem taking Jaylen Waddle. Let's move over to George Pickens, who is one of my favorite wide receivers to draft this year. He is wide receiver 28, my wide receiver 22, in an offense that lost a player who routinely sees anywhere from 120 to 140 targets, and Deontay Johnson was traded away this offseason. But last year, George Pickens had a 21% target share. He was also 15th in market share of air yards, but 63 catches, 1,100 yards last year with a 12.3 fantasy points per game. But he was still really good last year. 17th in yards per route run, 11th in yards per team pass attempts. He was 16th in unrealized air yards and 61st in catchable target rate last year. The quarterback play was abysmal. I know. I'm already hearing it. Arthur Smith, Arthur Smith, Arthur Smith. Listen, things to take into consideration with Arthur Smith. While yes, he does some things that are frustrating with personnel groupings and stuff like that, we did see him back when he was with the Titans really resurrect somebody like Ryan Tannehill. Now that this team is going to get a quarterback upgrade with getting Russell Wilson, you can whatever you think about Russell Wilson anymore, I still think it's an upgrade, or even Justin Fields. But I think Russell Wilson is going to be the guy. While he wasn't great last year, he still finished ninth in true completion percentage, sixth in red zone completion percentage, and third in pressure completion percentage last year. So this is a good upgrade for George Pickens, who only has really Roman Wilson, who was the second round pick, to really fight for targets against, because they added Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins, and Scotty Miller. Some of those guys may not even make this team. I'm not worried about that. I think George Pickens explodes this year. He has gotten better each of the last 2 seasons. While yes, this may not be the most prolific offense this year, I still think George Pickens stands to be in a very good spot. And I think he's somebody that you could probably look at from going with his 106 targets last year. Really think he can get in about the 130, 135 range this year. I love George Pickens and really wouldn't be shocked if he finishes as a high end wide receiver 2 this year. Next up, let's move over to tight ends. We'll wrap this thing up. I have Evan Ingram. He is ECR's tight end 8, my tight end 4. Don't really get it why he is going off the board at tight end 8, considering he had 114 catches, 963 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns last year. He had a 23% target share. He was first in routes run, which is one of the most important things you should be looking for in your tight end, because obviously we're looking for we're looking for that volume when it comes to tight end. But third in deep targets, 14th in red zone targets last year, ninth in yards per route run, fifth in yards per team pass attempt. He was only behind TJ Hawkinson and Travis Kelce with a 24% first read target share last year. Yes, they drafted Brian Thomas and signed Gabe Davis, but they also lost Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones. Evan Ingram has proved to be Trevor Lawrence's safety valve. So really like Evan Ingram. I talked about really liking the Jaguars offense to bounce back this year, and I will be buying Evan Ingram, especially at cost. If you don't want to, draft a guy really early like Sam Laporta or Travis Kelce, I think waiting on Evan Ingram in the 7th, 8th round, I'm doing that all day, especially at cost. So that being said, those are the 6 players I really want to talk. I very easily could have talked about guys like Drake London or Kyler Murray. But every video talks about the same, 5 or 6 players. I wanted to kind of get a little bit different here and talk about some other players that really aren't getting the love right now. So these are my 6. These are the guys that I'll be taking a lot in drafts coming up here in a couple of months. So keep it locked in here for a lot more content. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.